Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out today to join this short webinar relating to the new international standard for health and safety management systems, which will be formally launched on March the 12th. As Charlotte said, I am joined by my colleague and senior auditor at British Safety Council, Kevin Evanet, who will be discussing some of the more significant issues 45001 is likely to raise.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so as you will no doubt be aware, the new international standard for health and safety management systems, ISO 45001, has been developed and will eventually replace up to 24 national health and safety standards, including the currently widely recognised OSAS 18001 standard. As there has been in excess of 65 member countries providing input to this process, and it's taken over 4 years to get to this stage, ISO 45001 is arguably the most important health and safety management standard ever developed. I think at this point it's worth emphasising that the new standard is most definitely a significant step forward from the current requirements of 18001, and that organisations who are currently certificated to this standard may well have some work to do to ensure an effective transition. So in the short session today, we're going to be looking at how the standard has been developed, the content of the new standard, some significant areas of difference from OSAS 18001, the main challenges for organisations who are looking to adopt 45001, and a brief outline of how to prepare for the transition to the new standard. So in the first instance then, why is it considered necessary, or why has it been considered necessary to develop an international framework standard for occupational health and safety management systems? The new standard is a natural progression in the spirit of continual improvement from the current OSAS model, OSAS 18001 model, and is indicative of a trend toward integrated management systems, or at least to utilise a standardised framework for management models to follow. It's become apparent, certainly over the last sort of 9 years since 18001 was last revised, that there is a need to harmonise and update variation in standards of safety management systems, and indeed the regional interpretations of 18001, into an internationally recognised framework for safety management. More and more organisations are now moving towards integrating their management systems, safety, environmental and quality, and then clearly then a consistent and recognised model is required. In October 2013, after much lobbying from various groups and stakeholders, ISO established a development committee with BSI providing the role of secretariat, who were given the daunting remit of developing this new international standard for health and safety management systems. The committee is comprised of 65 member countries represented by over 90 delegates, who aimed to form a collaborative and consensus-based approach towards the development of ISO 45001. BSI's HS1 committee, which contains representatives from health and safety professional bodies, including the British Safety Council, acts as the UK forum, in effect our national body, for consultation and communication on issues relating to 45001. But as you can imagine, with so many varied interests and opinions among the delegates, progression of the standard has not been without some difficulties. As previously mentioned, one of the main drivers for the development of 45001 has been the need or the desire to harmonise standards and the approach across the various management disciplines. Organisations and people who are familiar with the environmental management standard 14001 and 9001, the quality management standard, will recognise the clauses in 45001 as they all follow the management system standards framework that was been established by ISO, known as Annex SL. And Annex SL is modelled on a Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is essentially a 4-stage repetitive model for continual improvement. Annex SL, and thereby 45001, includes some interesting requirements
which have now been adopted as explicit clauses, and they are a significant step forward from the requirements of 18,000. So if we look more closely at these at the framework requirements within 45,001, which have been derived from Annex SL, as we've said, the 10 main component elements which form the management system framework are scope, normative references, terms and definitions, and then clauses 4 to 10, which are basically the main components of the new standard. Clause 4 refers to the context of the organisation. So organisations are expected to demonstrate understanding of their organisation and the effect that their activities have on interested parties. Clause 5 is, and we'll be looking at this in a lot more detail shortly, is undoubtedly the centerpiece, if you like, of the whole standard, and it places an absolute requirement on top management to demonstrate leadership and commitment. Clause 6 is all about planning to achieve the intended outcomes of your safety management system, and Clause 7 is details the requirements for the support that may be needed in terms of resources and continual improvement to achieve these intended outcomes. Clause 8 focuses around the operation, the control processes, safe operating procedures, and so on, whereas Clause 9 is the checking element of the plan, do, check, act cycle, and refers to the performance evaluation, so the monitoring, the measuring, evaluating, and analysing safety management performance. Clause 10 is how organisations act upon this information and improve. So it's referring specifically to corrective action and continual improvement. So as we've outlined, 45,001 is based upon these 10 main clauses of Annex SL. However, we don't get away with things that easily. There are 43 subclauses within 45,001 and an annex guidance at the Annex A at the back of the standard, which provides a general outline of the intention of each clause and subclause. In addition, BSI are currently finalising a new UK guidance document, which has the reference number of BS45002, which will provide the details on how to implement 45,001. Latest information I have is that this guidance will be issued in alignment with 45,001 on March the 12th. So clauses 4 to 10 of the standard will form the basis and the focus for your certification if you are looking to be externally certificated to 45,001. And although clauses 1 to 3 are basically introductory, there are a couple of issues contained within them that are worthy of a quick look. So clause 1 talks about the applicability and the intention of the standard. You know, that the standard is designed to support organisations with continual improvement and to fulfil their legal requirements and to achieve health and safety objectives. It also talks about some exclusions to the standard, for example, product safety, and there are no specific criteria or parameters within 45,001 for performance criteria or how to design your safety management system. Moving on to clause 3, and this really is worthy of some attention, because it does provide some clear definition for terms and references that are used throughout the standard, and some interesting content is included in this clause, such as the definition of worker, which is defined as a person performing work-related activities under the control of an organisation. Now, apart from the obvious group of employees, this also would be applicable. This term would also be applicable to volunteers, agency workers, and contractors and subcontractors, for that matter. Perhaps two of the most significant terms that are used throughout the standard are participation and consultation, and there is a subtle difference between the two of them. Participation is defined as involvement in the decision making process, and there is a specific requirement within the standard for non-managerial roles to be able to demonstrate that they are actively participating in the improvement of the safety management system. So one of the other terms that perhaps is also new, certainly from 18,001, is a health and safety opportunity, which basically are circumstances that can lead to the improvement of the health and safety performance.
So Dave, if we look at the standard in a little bit more detail, what do you think will be the main challenges for organisations looking to adopt ISO 45000 requirements?
Yeah, okay, Kev. I think the two central themes of the standard are undoubtedly leadership and, as we've already mentioned, worker participation. And I think that these may well present some challenges to organisations when adopting the standard. 45001 explicitly focuses on the commitment of top management towards developing, implementing and maintaining an effective safety management system, and the requirement to ensure that the requirements of the safety management system are actually integrated into the business process.
But aren't those requirements in any case part of the current OSAS 18001 standard?
Arguably, Kev, that there are most definitely there are implications for top management within 18,001, but 45,001 really does explicitly require top management commitment and leadership, and there are in fact 13 explicit requirements placed on top management within clause 5.1. Some of these requirements include ensuring that, as we've already mentioned, that health and safety is an integral part of the overall business planning, and it's part of the business processes. So it's a deliberate intention to move away from this concept of health and safety being a bit of a bolt-on part of the business. Ensuring adequate resources are provided for the effective implementation, and one of the most I think challenging areas for top management will be the requirement for them to demonstrate that they develop, lead and promote a culture that supports the health and safety management system. So in terms of developing, leading and promoting this culture within a business, Kevin, as an auditor, what would you be looking for in relation to this?
Well, undoubtedly the success of any health and safety management system has to be dependent upon the commitment and participation from all levels and functions within the organisation. But we can never really get away from the fact that the ethos and practices are really driven by the top level management in the business, and we'll be looking for some direct involvement in top management, for example in setting occupational health and safety objectives through management meetings and reviews, and those objectives are aligned to business targets. We'll be looking for things like evidence of a provision of appropriate resources to support those objectives, and supporting evidence, such as minutes of meetings and so on. I'll be looking for personal top management KPIs for occupational health and safety, and things such as participation in safety forums, such as safety committees, and perhaps participation of senior managers in safety tours. It might be worth noting that there is a definition of top management within clause 3 of the new standard, which is a person or group of persons who directs or controls an organisation at the highest level. And it's just worth perhaps noting that that is a similar definition to the one that occurs within the UK Corporate Manslaughter Act. In terms of external certification, what it means is that the auditor, when we arrive on site, we'll definitely be looking to gain access to top management personnel during the audit process.
Okay, Kev, thanks for that, and hopefully, that does sort of outline the significant step forward from the implied requirements on top management in 18,001 to the more explicit demands placed on top management of an organisation within the new standard. On the subject of leadership and change, I'd just like to share some prophetic words written by a personal icon of mine. This was over 50 years ago when these words were written, but probably just as relevant today. And they were part of a speech by J.F. Kennedy, President of the United States at the time. And he said that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future, and change is the law of life. Perhaps these words are made a little bit more poignant by the fact that they are an extract from his last ever speech, which he never actually got to actually deliver. Okay, so another explicit requirement of the new standard in clause 5, and indeed a theme running throughout 45001, is in relation to the consultation with and participation of workers towards the development, implementation and continual improvement of the safety management system. Remembering our definition of worker from earlier, that this group extends to beyond employees. So again, just a reminder, this is anyone who is carrying out activities under the control of the organisation. I think most organisations will be able to demonstrate consultation processes and methods of consultation, but I think that many organisations may well struggle to adequately demonstrate participation. Again, that definition of participation is involvement in the decision-making process. And note how the standard requires demonstrable evidence of consultation with and participation of non-managerial levels in respect of this. So again, Kev, thinking about participation and your role as an external auditor, what would you be expecting to see in relation to this?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, Dave. I think that most organisations with a mature health and safety management system will be able to demonstrate consultation processes, things like health and safety committees and other forums. And I think it's this actual participation that might be more challenging for them to verify. Just note that clause 5.4 also requires that time, training and that the resources necessary for consultation and participation are provided. So in that respect, I want to see some evidence of training actually in this consultation and participation process. There's several operational areas, I think, where worker participation should not only be demonstrable, but probably is essential, particularly things like risk assessments, where the operator actually carrying out tasks probably understand the hazards and risks better than anyone, and really they should be involved anyway in the risk assessment process. Also accident investigation and continual improvement generally through enhanced control measures. I think things such as suggestion schemes, well-developed near-miss reporting processes should be in place and be effective, and we'll be looking for evidence of those. The emergency response arrangements will undoubtedly require some kind of worker participation to ensure that they're not only effective, but are suitable for the worker group involved. And again, it's essential that staff forums, those already mentioned, are not only consulted, but they're influencing the decision-making process. Decisions regarding the health and safety management system are taken after due involvement from this forum rather than before. Again, clause 5.4c, there's a requirement here for the employer to determine and remove obstacles or barriers to participation and minimize those that cannot be removed. And again, that's really a new concept, I think, in terms of management systems. And I want to see some real evidence that this is actually happening as a proactive process. So some kind of documented assessment to demonstrate that this has been considered.
Okay, thanks, Kev. That's really quite interesting, and I can't stress enough that leadership and commitment from top management is a predominant theme throughout the standard. Another aspect that's introduced within the new standard, which is not really found anywhere within 18001, is the concept of considering the full context of the organisation, and this is required under clause 4. Organisations will be expected to demonstrate that they have considered internal and external factors which are relevant to their operational activities and which have the potential ability to influence the effectiveness of the safety management system. This is directly related to arrangements really for organisational and operational risk profiling and any subsequent risk management processes that are that fall out of this. It is absolutely essential really that organisations have the ability to identify, control and reduce relevant risks, but also to identify opportunities to improve actually presented by this process. So by understanding the overall context of your organisation and the impact that your operational activities may have, either actually do have or potentially could have, the scope and the content of your safety management system can be determined on a much more informed and relevant basis really.
Some external factors which may need to be considered during this process include political, legal and economic factors, all of which may influence strategic planning, resources and business direction. This is reflective actually of a wider strategic approach to occupational health and safety management that's seen under this new standard, rather than the sort of bolt-on approach that was often adopted previously. Continuing the requirement on top management to ensure integration of occupational health and safety into the business process. An example of this wider consideration of external factors might be, for example, by a local authority who may need to consider how a change of political governance at both national and local level may impact upon the resources necessary for the effective implementation. As an auditor, I want to see some real evidence of these considerations, probably documented within top management reviews.
Okay, thanks, Kev. Also within clause 4, there is a requirement on the organisation to determine needs and expectations of workers and other groups, other interested parties. Other interested parties could include non-employees such as regulatory authorities actually, parent organisations, suppliers, contractors, subcontractors, customers, visitors, and even emergency services who may have occasion to visit your site. This assessment of the needs and expectations of these groups should really inevitably identify differing needs really for different groups. Some of these needs may well be legal requirements. So, for example, it may be that training is required legally for certain groups, or personal protective equipment or communication of emergency arrangements, for example. And again, this is an explicit requirement within the new standard. Okay, so we've looked at the two of the main areas in terms of leadership commitment and worker participation, and clause 6 of the new standard is concerned with planning and strategic development. Although I wouldn't expect personally for organisations with mature safety management systems, and certainly if you're already certificated to 18001, I don't think this is going to present too many problems. However, you will be expected to demonstrate that health and safety is a component part of the overall business planning, and as Kevin has already mentioned, it doesn't become this bolt-on area of the business. I think we're all too well aware that health and safety has the ability to affect all areas of the business, and to me it's therefore logical that management of operational business risk must include health and safety control systems. The standard itself will require that you identify specific risks and opportunities arising from operational activities, and this concept of identifying opportunities for improvement is perhaps an interesting new requirement, and it's intended to ensure that your risk management process does actually consider these opportunities to continually improve the process, as well as focusing on any threats presented. Kevin, what kind of opportunities could you or would you look for, or could an organisation demonstrate to you as an auditor that they have identified?
Well, I expect that many organisations are actually already identifying opportunities to improve, almost by default. For example, most risk assessment processes will identify further controls, which, if they're then implemented effectively, are themselves an opportunity for improvement. Things like accident reviews will again almost certainly identify opportunities to improve. And genuine participation of the consultation forums we discussed earlier will also present good opportunities.
Yeah, okay. I personally, as I mentioned earlier, I don't anticipate this clause, certainly the other requirements within this clause, presenting organisations with too many difficulties. As to be perfectly honest, they are fundamental to any effective safety management system. In particular, the requirements relating to setting of defined objectives and developing suitable plans to achieve these targets. Identifying and evaluating legislative requirements, again, and evaluating the effectiveness of your safety management system are fairly fundamental elements that people should be well familiar with. These factors do present the ideal opportunities to demonstrate this worker participation that we mentioned before, particularly with setting objectives, top management leadership as well, and also integrating health and safety within the business plan. So moving on to clause 7, and clause 7 is all focused around the requirement to provide adequate resources and support in order to achieve the effective implementation of your safety management system. And these resources can include, obviously, personnel, infrastructure, buildings, plant, equipment, and so on, technological support, and obviously financial resources. In considering the competency requirements within this clause, the level of preventive and protective control measures should be determined, together with relevant skills that may be required as part of any particular role or task activity. The competence of workers and other stakeholders should really include the knowledge and skills they require to effectively implement the specific tasks in a safe manner. And it is essential, stating the obvious, but it is essential that workers and other stakeholders are made fully aware of actions to take in an emergency event, consequences of individual actions, for example, and the benefits of improved and safe performance. The communication processes established by the organisation should really ensure the effective flow of information across the company as a whole, and indeed to externally as well. And diversity aspects such as language, disability, cultural issues should really and must really be taken into account within these processes. Okay, so we're moving on to clause 8 now, which is all about operational planning and control, and it requires the standard. It requires suitable planning and control processes to be established and effectively implemented, and to meet the requirements of not only this standard but your safety management system. Interestingly, and again, this is a step on from 18. It explicitly requires the adoption of a recognised hierarchy of control process. But again, I don't think this will present too many issues for organisations. One new, or at least significantly enhanced area from OSAS 18001 within Clause 8 is that of the need for a defined process for the control of change or planned changes, and it is now a separate subclause within the new standard. So the standard is asking you to look at planned changes, temporary or permanent, that could impact upon the health and safety performance. And so it's closely linked with the other subclauses within this area of procurement, management, and control of contractors. So Kevin, again, from an auditor's perspective, keep saying this to you, but I think it is useful to know what auditors will be looking for. What would you expect to see in place in respect of this management of change issue?
Well, as you say, Dave, it is further developed here than it was in the 18001 standard, and in actual fact, the standard itself says that we need to consider both temporary and permanent change, and there's a specific requirement, in fact, to include structural changes, workplace changes, new equipment, changes in working conditions, any changes in legal requirements, and any technological changes. The management change process must be designed to minimise the introduction of new hazards and risks presented during and after the change has taken place. Again, management change will present ideal opportunities, by the way, to demonstrate worker participation and top management leadership. Any functions or services which are outsourced must also be suitably controlled and demonstrated within the management system. Similarly, procurement of goods, equipment and services must also be effectively controlled and confirmed to the new management system requirements. Note that an important and explicit requirement of the new standard relates to appointment, management and control of contractors. This would require the process to be established for communication of organisational health and safety requirements to contractors, communication of risks arising from contractor activity to management, staff and other stakeholders, monitoring of contractor health and safety performance. There's also a specific requirement to manage emergency preparedness and response, which in many ways is similar to that in 18001. And the identification of potential emergency situations and the risks arising for such events, the mitigating controls, including planned response, drills, equipment, competent staff, etc., are required to prevent or minimise the consequences must be implemented.
Okay, thanks, Kev. That's really useful. Personally, and this is just a personal opinion, I must stress that I'm particularly pleased to see that the new standard has drawn out this issue of appointment, managing and control of contractors. In my experience of auditing, it is one of the areas that inevitably and undoubtedly causes quite a lot of angst across lots of organisations within different sectors. So moving on to the checking part of our Plan, Do, Check, Act and the monitoring, measuring and evaluation of how effective your safety management system is. Clause 9 stipulates explicit requirements in relation to this and including determining which aspects of your safety management system you actually do need to monitor. Obviously, there's going to be legislative requirements and how you evaluate your compliance with them, how effective your risk control measures are, and how you are progressing with achieving your health and safety objectives. It also talks about clause 9. This also talks about how the methods of measuring. So through inspection, audits, management reviews, etc. This is all included, and there are quite some detailed requirements within clause 9 in respect of those three areas. It's obviously, as Kevin has already mentioned, actually, it's important to plan, establish and maintain a process to manage incidents and non-conformities. And obviously this needs to be the reporting and investigation of them, but also probably just as important really is the remedial actions taken following these incidents. 9.2 actually does stipulate some explicit requirements for internal audit programs, and in particular top management reviews are detailed, and these include specific input and output factors which really must be considered as part of these management reviews. So for example, you would expect your top management review to include, of the safety management performance, to include actions arising from any previous reviews, changes in internal and external conditions. Have we actually achieved our health and safety objectives? Have we reviewed our risk assessments? Have they been effective? Do we need any additional resources? The overall suitability of the safety management system, and have we identified and actually implemented our opportunities to continually improve? So the final clause and the final part of the Plan, Do, Check, Act model within 45,001 refers to improvement, and it requires processes in place to be in place and to be that effectively ensure that actions are taken in a timely manner to address the non-conformities we spoke about in clause 9. That direct and indirect causes of incidents are determined, likelihood of recurrence is established. Again, this review of relevant risk assessments. Any changes to the safety management system, that these are carried out effectively and communicated effectively as well. And the safety management system really should be subject to continual improvement and review, and making sure that a process for ensuring this is established and effectively implemented. Again, clause 10 provides an opportunity, but there is also an emphasis on the participation of workers, as we keep mentioning, in respect to this.
So Dave, how would you summarise the main changes from OSAS 18001 and indeed the main themes of the new standard?
Okay, as we said right at the beginning of the session, I don't think we should underestimate or underplay the significance of ISO 45001. It is most definitely a huge step forward and provides a contemporary framework, reflective of modern trends in safety management. Particularly the big changes, really, the significant changes from 18001. Really is this demonstrable focus and emphasis on demonstrable leadership and commitment from top management in particular. There's obviously a closer alignment to the other management disciplines and standards, again sort of fostering this integration of health and safety into the overall business planning, the identification of opportunities as well as threats that we've just mentioned, the real huge emphasis on worker participation in development and operation of the safety management system, which is a real step forward in my view. There is a focus on the prevention of ill health, immediate and long-term causes, although perhaps maybe not as much focus on this as there might have been, perhaps. Yeah, I think they're probably the main areas, Kev.
Okay. Well, it has been quite a long time coming, actually, Dave. Perhaps you could, perhaps you could tell us how things are currently in terms of the launch of the new standard.
Yeah. Okay. So, as people will probably be aware, the ballot of participating members on the second final draft on January 25th this year overwhelmingly approved the new standard, the amended version, and it's now ready to be launched on March the 12th. As I've already mentioned, the UK guidance document that BSI have developed on implementing 45,000 will also be available around this date. 18001, OSAS 18001 is now expected to be withdrawn over a 3-year period from March the 12th, and so organisations really need to be thinking now of transferring their certification to the new standard in order to maintain this sort of same degree of external recognition. And in relation to planning for this transition, Kev, have you got any little hints you can give us there?
Well, I guess in the first instance, organisations shouldn't panic. If an organisation is already certificated to 18001 and have been continually improving and have a mature health and safety management system, then the transition shouldn't really be too problematic. Having said that, as we've outlined in this session, there are some significant differences between the two standards, and it's essential that a coherent plan is put together, and I guess that's the key thing really, just putting together a suitable plan. Talk to your certification body and actually document a plan which can identify resources, any particular communication needs, any training that may be needed, and support that might be required to ensure all relevant stakeholders are familiar with the requirements of the process. Get a copy of the standard itself and assess the impact the requirements may have upon the organisation's current management system. Maintain updated information on the changes and final standard issue during the process. Talk and communicate to your internal stakeholders, engage with them, and I think especially senior management, I think probably it's worth making that point as early as possible, really, informing senior management that they will perhaps have to change the way that they've been they've been managing safety, perhaps. Ensure that understanding and ownership of the amended safety management system. As I said earlier, it may involve training and education certain levels of management staff in order to ensure that runs smoothly. Review current levels and assess current levels of leadership and commitment within the organisation, particularly at senior management level, and be realistic and open during the process. I think that it's important to monitor and communicate regular progress that's made towards achievement of the transition plan in order to promote and maintain that awareness and understanding.
Okay, thanks Dave and Kev. So that brings us almost to the end of our session. But before we take questions, just want to let you know about some of the support things that we have available on ISO 45001. We're holding workshops throughout this year in London, Birmingham and Manchester, and you can find dates on our website at britsafe.org/events. We'll also be offering pre-audit assessment and support services to help you in gaining the certification. We'll send out some more information about this very soon, but keep an eye on our website. We have ISO 45001 dedicated pages which will have all of the latest information available for you. Okay, so now let's take some questions. So our first question is from Rob in Liverpool. And how should OH&S managers enthuse their businesses with the new standard, especially if the organisation has been certificated to OSAS 18001 previously?
Okay, so I'll take that one then, Kev, to start with. Yeah, that's a good question actually, because obviously, if organisations have been certificated to 18001, then perhaps the question is going to be asked, well, what's the difference, and how can health and safety people enthuse senior management in particular? I guess it comes down to hopefully some of the things we've outlined and the business benefits that can be gained by any organisation by adopting an internationally recognised safety management system standard. So the new standard undoubtedly addresses contemporary issues and trends. It supports integration of health and safety across all aspects of the business. Perhaps more importantly, it encourages and actually demands really stakeholder participation, which in turn really improves or should improve the culture within the organisation, your stakeholder and your staff in particular, morale, the involvement with the company and engagement, staff retention. All of these things really are obvious benefits of engaging and actually effectively having your employees participate in the decision-making processes. I think this new standard definitely presents a real opportunity to demonstrate top management leadership and commitment to external stakeholders, and also gives you the opportunity to influence your supply chain as well. I think these are probably, if that doesn't enthuse your business and your top management, then you may be on a sticky wicket there.
Okay, thanks, Dave. We've also had a question from Alistair about how can you demonstrate the effectiveness of corrective actions? I'll give this one to Kevin.
Thanks for that question, Alistair. How to demonstrate effectiveness of corrective actions? I think that, again, really, I think through the process of the safety management itself. I think in particular audits, inspections, probably audits, regular auditing, through that process it's quite easy, I think, to demonstrate effectiveness.
Okay, great, thanks for that. And how should organisations plan to demonstrate continual improvement?
How should organisations plan to demonstrate continual improvement? Well, obviously, there are quite a few tangible ways in which you can demonstrate continual improvement. We've already been sort of focusing heavily on participation of workers and other stakeholders, and that in itself is a demonstration of continual improvement. Improved controls. Kevin's mentioned just in the last question about internal audit outcomes. So improved controls that come through internal audits and management reviews and perhaps accident investigations, staff surveys, that type of thing, are all evidence of this continual improvement cycle or process, if you like. They're all tangible ways you can demonstrate this.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I've noticed quite a lot of people have been asking about getting the presentation slides and whether we're recording. So I just want to confirm we are recording the full session along with the slides, and they will be sent out to you after this session has ended. And you can also request them from us. If you don't get the PowerPoint presentation, then you can email us at webinar@britsafe.org and we'll be able to send them to you. We have time for one final question, which is where to obtain the new standard and Annex SL documentation. So you can pick up the standard from your respective national bodies from March the 12th when it's launched. So that would be BSI in the UK and or direct from ISO themselves. Regarding Annex SL, we have a white paper that's available free of charge. And if you, again, email webinar@britsafe.org, we'll be happy to send this to you. So that's all from us. Thank you very much for joining us and take care.
Good afternoon.